It was with great pleasure that I read this introduction written by Rachel Beauvais. Through vivid imagery, sensory language, and a playful yet resonating voice, Rhea Mukherjee colorfully paints a world full of unique smells, tastes, and sounds. Rhea has been around the world and then some. She uses her experiences to color not only her writing, but her sensibilities, and an impassioned interest in cultural and political happenings worldwide. After graduation, Rhea will move back to Bangalore with her husband and is wishing she could take all the lovely people she has met here with her. Instead, she is working on persuading everyone to move to India with her while also trying to seduce her husband into adopting a puppy. Rhea Mukherjee.
The list of thank yous is so very long, so I better get started. I would really like to thank my parents who are here in the audience tonight for their unconditional love and support. My cousin sister Disha is visiting all the way from Bangalore, India. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so grateful to my husband Arun, who has been the most supportive partner I could have asked for. My thesis committee, Amy Fan and Shanti Sekaran, I've cherished the time we have spent together. Your encouragement and guidance has been critical to my work. Anita Amrazavani, who I've worked with for 2 straight years, I'm sure she's very happy I'm graduating finally. You have been so genuine and dedicated to my writing projects. Thank you so much. And finally, within my MFA community, I have been so lucky to find a few of you who have supported me as a writer and personally. Rachel Beauvais, Nick Johnson, Kimberly Kim, Martha Grover, and the rest of you who have inspired me with your creativity and absolute insanity. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to read a short story called Unspeakable. You and I are bound by memories. We are tied by memories of cricket games during monsoon rains, of fried cauliflower eaten over elementary textbooks, and familiar songs. You are somewhere else now, thousands of miles away from the neighborhood we came from, but I'm sure you remember what I do. You remember my mother always adored you. She said you were like her own son. She would watch us do homework together on my dining table, laden with bowls of almonds and salted peanuts. She made sure to give you extra attention when you had a question about your physics lesson. You always had plenty of questions for her. At your house, we spent hours watching English sitcoms on TV, and then, during commercial break, we would make up our own. We would while away hot afternoons with mango juice and almonds, singing advertisement jingles to our own lyrics, until my mother would shout out my name from the next house. And you, my faithful friend, would follow me back and enjoy my mother's attention and indulged in her offerings of snacks. Cucumber and mint chutney sandwiches, and cauliflower fried in a batter of chickpea flour, chili powder, turmeric, and salt. You used to make fun of me, of my oily braids and my handwriting. You were always the smart one, destined to do great things, and I was secretly envious of you. I was jealous that you talked as confidently as you did. I hated that your legs could run faster than mine during our cricket games, and that you always came first in class. It did not matter that I was a year younger, and we were not even in the same class. You were the apple of your parents' eyes and my mother's, and for that, I was envious. When did things change? It's easy to answer. After I grew breasts, my hips became wider and my hair wavier than before. Our parents were wary of us spending time together. We were no longer allowed to watch hours of TV unsupervised at your house. You had learned to play the piano by 14 and wanted to show me a new song you had learned. Remember? My father's loud, thundering voice as he screamed my name from downstairs. I was no fool. I knew my father didn't want us upstairs alone. But what was stranger was the fact that I wanted to be alone with you, watching you play the black and white keys. I wanted to look at your hands move like gentle cascades on the keyboard, and somehow I knew you wanted me to be with you too. That day was different, wasn't it? You must recall that everything started to change from that day. Remember your mother would call my family over for dinner almost every Friday night during those years? Our parents chattered on about politics and jobs, but you would look at me from across the chair at the dining table. You and I were content and happy just to do that, to just stare like it was our own private language, a secret in front of everyone. It's funny because only a couple years ago, we would have been bored to death looking at each other. We would have much rather been playing cricket or making fun of TV commercials. Then your father left, without word, without letters. You became so serious after that. You became more focused and determined to leave the neighborhood, the city, the country. I couldn't blame you, but you knew, right? You knew I was hurt by your sudden change. Do you remember our trip to Delhi only a couple of years later? It was after you had gotten admission to university in America. You would leave in a few months. My mother and your mother took the both of us to Delhi without my father. It was a very different trip because our mothers were not strict with us. They let us go roaming around in an auto rickshaw by ourselves to experience the city. It was blazing hot. I remember I put my dupatta on your head as we walked to cover yourself from the sun. You had cracked a smile and then made a joke. I don't remember what it was about, but I remember laughing with such careless abandon that the pedestrians looked at us with frowns. I know you don't want to remember that trip, not because of what happened on that trip, but what happened right after it. I know it is still unspeakable for you, but for me, it is only part of the story. What is more important is what happened in Delhi. I had pulled you across to Janpat to shop for those cloth bags. In the auto, do you remember? I experienced you in a different way that day. My arm grazed yours like it probably has many, many times before, except this time. I sucked in my breath, savoring every inch of your arm that was in contact with mine. Our conversation was lulled into silence by the hum of the auto and the heat. Our bodies, they were speaking to each other. You responded to this by gently grazing my hand with yours. Slowly, you grasped it, and then you held it with a firmness that startled me. Your hands were sweaty, and it was warm, comforting, and reassuring. You held my hand for the entire trip, and then when we got off the auto, we acted like nothing happened. You made another joke, something about the auto driver having lice in his hair. I knew you enjoyed making me laugh. We walked in the midst of throngs of people, thirsty-looking beggars, housewives in bright colors, and older college kids in denim and fancy shoes. Voices and laughter, shopkeepers yelling, pleading for anyone to buy their clothes and bangles, but that walk was still private. You got serious again in the auto. You caught my hand again, but this time started conversation like everything was normal. I wanted to tell you then to wait. Wait for one more year. Wouldn't it be fun if I could come to America with you? I might have told you later, after we had come back from Delhi, but then the unspeakable happened. Why don't we ever talk of this? You talk to me often enough, sometimes from a business trip in China or from your house in Seattle. You send me postcards filled with our childhood jokes and birthday cards brimming with nostalgic references and good wishes, but we never talk of this. Years later, I'm sure we both can understand why it happened. You were packing your things that evening, and my mother had told me to help you. Both our mothers were at my place, and both you and I had found it a bit odd that they were leaving us alone in your house. You didn't hold my hand that evening, even though we both were alone. But things were going through my head as I stared at your dark arms lift and pack clothes. I noticed every little muscle that flexed as you picked up a stack of folded pants. I stared at your hands and the veins that were prominent even through your dark skin. I thought about your sweaty palms, and then of them holding my hands in the auto. Then I thought of them touching my face, my waist, and my stomach. I thought of your mouth on my neck and your saliva sticking to my throat, and then your lips pinched and wet on my collarbone. I thought of touching your chest with my hands and sliding them below your denim waistband. And then, as I sat on the corner of your bed that evening, watching you pack, my body pulsed to the beat of weakened breaths, and I swear to God I wanted so badly for you to touch me. But you didn't. Instead, you said we should go next door to my house and hassle my mother for a cup of tea. So we left the room and left the only chance of doing anything intimate. We might have had another chance, but things changed once we entered my house. We heard it as soon as we entered. Unfamiliar movement and hushed moans. It was certainly not the sound of our mothers in the kitchen frying pakoras. I was about to shout my mother's name out, but you did something I never expected you to. You motioned with your finger to be silent, and we tiptoed on the stairs of my parents' room. The door was half open and we saw it. My mother's sari undone, breasts spilling and being caressed by your mother. I saw your mother's long hair cover her meaty back, and you saw your mother's legs wrapped around your mother's buttocks. You backed away and went down the stairs as silently as you came up. I followed you and we went outside. We never talked of it again. There was really nothing to say about it, just like you and me. What could we say? You left 2 weeks later. You emailed me only a month later about our university and life in America, and I emailed you about my last year of school. You had your life and I had mine. There was no common street to link us, no common time or place to take auto rides and spend afternoons over TV shows. That year, the summer sun blazed without you, and the cooling monsoon rains came and went in your absence. Our mothers still talked, spent time together trying to be discreet, but I never told you any of it, and you never asked. You and I are bound by memories, even after multiple years, lovers, American degrees, jobs, and plane rides. You and I are bound by images, sweaty hands, and piano playing, half-eaten pakoras, and mouths stained with fresh fruit. You might forget about these memories most of the time when you are at your office or making love to your girlfriend. You might forget when you're eating a sandwich at the mall or on a business trip talking to a work associate. You might especially forget when you look outside your window and see a neat, pristine neighborhood, one unlike your old one. Or maybe you are like me and the new neighborhood reminds you of your old one. You like to tell me you are a world traveler, but you really only travel for business. You might have been to Japan and China and perhaps even Thailand. I tease you through distant phone calls and occasional emails about how you really only stay in those corporate hotels and how that's not real traveling. Our conversations are familiar, but their content is not of the past. You have lived for years and years away from those formative days, and so have I. I live in one of those big cities now too, in a foreign land just like you. I too forget about the past during meals with friends, while running my 5 laps around the lake, or when I sit in front of the computer in my chalky white cubicle decorated with pictures of my new life. Sometimes I forget about your dark-skinned smile when I smile into the eyes of my current lover. We walked out of the room our mothers made love in because it was easier to ignore, and we wanted so badly to live our own lives, not theirs. Sometimes I imagine what would have happened that evening you were packing. If I had really gone up to you and touched you, what would have happened if I had held you? Could your body have resisted mine? Would we have forgotten about going back to my house for tea? Could you have stayed? Today, I bought cauliflower from the supermarket. I broke it into pieces and submerged them in spiced batter. I fried them the same way you used to demand from my mother, extra crispy. Perhaps I expected the taste to remind me of our cricket games played on pothole tar, or the mathematic problems you solved with such practiced swiftness. But the cauliflower tasted foreign and coated my tongue in flavors I could not remember. I continued to eat it, ultimately devouring the whole plate, and then waited to feel content. Thank you.